Star Wars 7x7 episode 3054. Choices is the second of 3 stories featuring Count Dooku in Tales of the Jedi. It continues on the themes of the previous episode and features a Jedi Master Dooku paired with a Jedi Master Mace Windu. Punch it. Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod and this is Star Wars 7x7, your daily dose of Star Wars joy, and thank you so much for joining me for it. So this episode takes place sometime prior to the events of The Phantom Menace, and by the way, we are in full spoiler territory for this episode, just to make it clear, because we find out in this episode that Mace Windu is not a part of the Jedi Council, and of course he is a member of the Jedi Council when we see him in The Phantom Menace for the first time, so yes, this definitely predates that situation. But what he is a stickler for rules, a fact which Dooku says is sometimes inspiring and sometimes maddening. In this particular case, the protocol that Mace Windu wants to follow is that they are on Raxus Secundus to pick up the body of a Jedi Master who was killed in an ambush, but apparently their mission does not involve any kind of investigation, and that isn't cool with Dooku, and quite frankly, I'm on Dooku's side with this one. And I'm actually mad at Mace Windu for this, especially considering that he says, yeah, you're basically in trouble and you keep breaking protocol and you're responsible for the death of the senator in this situation, which he certainly, Dooku, was not. The reason why Mace Windu says Dooku's responsible for the senator's death is because Dooku wouldn't let it go that he had to understand what happened to the Jedi Master, and the guards shot the senator when he revealed what had actually happened. Like, that's not Dooku's fault, and it makes sense that some sort of justice is found for the Jedi who was killed, and certainly then for the senator who gets killed as a result of this too. And we find out with the confession from one of the guards that this senator, very much like the senator from the previous episode of Tales of the Jedi, is corrupt and was using his position as a means of power and influence. In his particular case for this episode, he was selling the planet basically to the highest bidder, bringing industrial development into the planet so that he could fatten his own coffers and those of his friends and followers and fans, and doing it at the expense of the planet. Now, we don't get to see the actual damage in the same way that we got to see it in the previous episode, but the gist of it is the same. And this is another episode where the Jedi are accused of being lapdogs of the Senate, that they are supposed to be keepers of the peace, but instead they're actually only serving as law and order for the rich and powerful. Dooku actually feels this and has a conversation with the guard after the guard is in prison and says that he doesn't condone the guy's methods and that the ideology is faulty in places, but he does have some good points. And then we come to find out at the end of the episode that Mace Windu has been selected to fill the seat on the Jedi Council that was vacated, lost when this particular Jedi Master got killed. So we find out that that Jedi Master was actually part of the Jedi Council. Dooku suspects foul play in the political sense. He believes that the reason why Mace Windu did not want to investigate things was because the Council didn't want it to be investigated and wanted to just, appoint Mace Windu and move on. Dooku absolutely doesn't agree with this whatsoever, and he shouldn't. Mace Windu says that, nope, this was absolutely not the case. I didn't know that they were going to do that. I mostly believe him, but I have to wonder whether he ever thought about being appointed to the Jedi Council, if that was something that he had ever considered might be a possibility. But I do believe him when he says that he did not know at the time that he was given this mission. I just think that he, being such a stickler for the rules, was not going to go against the Jedi Council, and that certainly only helped his cause in being appointed to the new position. But I don't think Mace Windu liked being accused of that, and he still thinks that Dooku is at fault for what happened, which I really don't believe he was. So, This feels like a moment where there is a clean break between Dooku and Mace Windu, and we know that in the Dooku Jedi Lost audio drama that was released a few years ago, like that actually depicts his official departure from the Jedi Order. I can imagine this being a situation where he's obviously not ready to leave the Jedi Order just yet, but this is where it cracks for him. We don't yet know if he's working with Darth Sidious / Palpatine yet, but I imagine that Palpatine's probably been working on him, and this may be the moment where he finally gets enough of a wedge in where he can start bringing Dooku on to do his dirty work, which we're going to talk about in the next episode of the podcast because it comes into play in the final episode of Tales of the Jedi. But for now, that is going to do it for this episode of the podcast. And it just remains for me to say thank you so much for joining me for it as always, and may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.
7 is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited, or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright 2021 by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.